I'm Catherine Flashner, and this is The Truth Is, a podcast about discovering what it means to live your truth, even when it's messy, when it unravels the plans you thought you had, and invites you to step into the unknown. Each week, we explore practices, stories, and conversations that illuminate the ways we find and follow our own path. This is a space to slow down, ask questions, and uncover what's been quietly waiting inside of you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Truth Is. I'm your host, Catherine Flashner. Today, my guests are brothers James and Michael Gallagher, co-founders of the brand Rituil. That's Rituil spelled Rituil. And we'll talk about why it's spelled that way in the episode. You know, it's a special thing when you meet someone new and you instantly realize you speak the same language, sharing not just values, but a similar curiosity about what matters most in life. I remember that's how I felt the day I met James. We were at a big work dinner, long table, and we were lucky to be seated right across from each other. Within minutes, we weren't talking about work at all, but about meditation, yoga, and the rituals and relationships that keep us grounded. It felt kismet, and it stuck with me. That moment is what ultimately led me to invite him and his brother Michael here today. Both James and Michael built successful corporate careers before deciding to create something together. James comes from a background in design, and Michael's career is in recruiting with early experience working abroad in manufacturing. Now they've brought those experiences together in this new chapter. Together, they founded Rituil, a brand and community that helps people return to their roots through daily ritual. Their products are created with sustainable, earth-conscious materials, and everything they design is about fostering connection to self, to nature, to each other. In this conversation, you'll hear the turning points that shaped them. From the bond that's carried them as brothers, to what it really takes to start something new, to how they're redefining success in a way that feels more human and intentional. If you've ever wondered what it looks like to build with purpose, to bring your values into the work you do, and to create rituals that actually ground you in everyday life, I think you'll take a lot from this conversation. And then be sure to check out their offering at rituil.com. James and Michael have extended code The Truth Is for 10% off your first order. Now let's get into it. Michael and James, welcome to The Truth Is. I will start by saying I feel so fortunate to have you both in my life. I was lucky to meet James a few years ago, and then got to meet Michael as the two of you began sharing with me the vision for what is now in the world as Rituil. And as someone who's been in the brand building and wellness world for quite some time, it's been really inspiring to witness how you've set out to build something that feels really rooted in alignment and integrity. And to that point, feels very connected to who you are individually in your own personal stories and journeys. So I'm excited to dive into what Rituil is and how you've created it together as brothers, as co-founders. So to start, could you each introduce yourselves, tell us who you are and what you do?
Catherine, thank you for having us. And it has been an amazing journey. And just thank you for being part of it. But you and I met a few years ago, and where we're at today is I'm one of the co-founders of Rituil along with my brother, Michael. And my background, my life has always been, I guess how I would describe myself as a creator. Michael and I both for a while before this year wanted to bring something to the world. And Rituil was that. We'll talk a little bit about what that was. But I think for me, my gifts, my talents are in the realm of creating products. That's what I've done my whole life. And after leaving corporate America, after leaving some jobs, I meditated for a while on what to create. And Rituil was that kind of seed. I'll hand it off to my younger brother.
You guys are really close in age.
We're
Yeah,
very
16
close in
months.
age. It feels closer than 16 months, but close in age and closer now than ever, I feel like.
Yeah, so Michael Gallagher, also co-founder of Ritual and proud brother of James. Yeah, I mean, for us, it all started back in lovely Cleveland, Ohio. Got five brothers and sisters, and kind of a crazy life growing up. Both of us very kind of driven from a career perspective. I think instilled both from our father, who is more in kind of relationship building and sales, and my mother, who owns a beautiful spa in Cleveland. And so, really came out of the gate, both of us going to college and really being career driven and focused on what the world kind of told us we should be focused on. So, spent 20 plus years for me pushing really hard and started out in finance and accounting, did an expat rotation out in Thailand, Malaysia, actually working in manufacturing plants that utilize renewable rubber, which is ironic. So that's what we're doing now as well with our mats and other products. But yeah, I really spent 20 years driving for those promotions, those accolades, the things that the world tells us we're supposed to do. And, just found out over time, like most do, that, those aren't the things that necessarily bring you joy and bring you happiness. So always wanted to do something, as James said, with my brother, and always just felt a pull that there was just, and I think a lot of people have this feeling, there's just something bigger that you're called to do or want to do. And a lot of it is centered around, I think, bringing some good to the world and some joy to the world. So very fortunate to have found this opportunity, which I'm sure we'll dig into kind of the when and how a bit more. But yeah.
Michael, I love what you just said because the first question I wanted to like really take us back is you both know I have two sisters, and a ritual we have is we try to go away together every 2 years, which feels not frequently enough, but life is life. And it's such a special time. I live across the country from them. And I'm always brought back to the like realization that they, if we're lucky, they will be the individuals that know me the longest in my life and like the most deeply, even if we're living in different places, like those two know me so well. I'd love to go back to your childhood. What was it like growing up, and what was your relationship like as brothers back then?
So we have kind of a unique family. My brother and I are 16 months apart. My sister and I, Tara, about 2.5 years apart. And then mom and dad decided then to have Corey, our youngest brother, about 10 years after I was born. So growing up, it was really, it was really my brother and I, initially, but always, because we were so close, really just the three of us up until about 10 years old. And, like any two brothers would do, we just had a blast being boys, playing outside, playing at our pond and our creek, and semi-terrorizing my sister, right? Just your standard Midwest family, not in a bad way, but just, always teasing each other, having fun. Grew up, great, loving home, attended a local church. I mean, pretty standard Midwest kind of upbringing.
When you guys were that young, was there any, this is what I want to be when I grow up? Was there any, I want to do what my parents did? Like what was early ideas around that?
I had no idea. I had no idea. I tried to follow in my dad's footsteps. I took a international business course. Like he was like, you should go into international business. That's where all the money is. And I'm like, it just wasn't me. I grew up sketching and drawing. I love to create and draw things, build little things. But when I was a kid, I didn't know that you could make a living doing that, right? So I remember I still have the note, like I sketched a flower, like a rose, and my art teacher, it's like, keep it up, you have talent. I'm like, oh, that's great. That was the only nudge I ever got to do what I'm doing today, which is creating something or designing something, right? But, it wasn't until I got we knew we had to go to college, I guess. Nowadays, it's not even the case, right? It's not really being pushed. Our father kind of pushed it. So we just went in, and maybe we'll talk about this, but I went through kind of a big injury trauma in high school where it set me back a year. And out of that, I wanted to be in psychology for trauma victims. That was really what I wanted to do. That's what my heart tugged at, right? Take an incident like that and turn it into good. And so I was going down that path for a while. Basically was halted through that because I failed a critical exam and ended up taking a few steps back saying, what do I really want to do? What can I do? And then enrolled into design school. And it wasn't until I was probably 20, 21 years old that I knew that a career in creating, designing things even existed. So I went and started from ground zero. And never looked back. I love it.
Yeah.
I was at a small private Christian school, and then, my graduating class of 23, and then moved to a graduating class of about 1,000, 5 months later. And I vividly remember, it was 3 floors. It was 3,000 students. It was insane. And I got lost. Was carrying all my books and was just crying at my locker. I was like, what's going on right now? But I just knew that I wanted, I wanted to go to school, and I ended up not fitting in at my high school. It wasn't me. And ended up taking college classes at a local community college my senior year. And great story. Used to get all A's, was always an A student, but just through the divorce really struggled. I did a lot better when my senior year when I was in college, and my father drove down with me to Miami of Ohio and basically didn't take no for an answer for the head of admissions to sit down and meet me. And, I even get a little teared up because it was really a big juncture in my life that really set the path for a lot of things to where I've been, where I'm at. But fought like hell for me, and, got in there, got great grades. And this is where I paid for all of my own school, took the opportunity to do finance and operations. Finance and accounting. I took the toughest classes because I was paying for it. Struggled through a lot of them, but ultimately, after landing my first role in taking that international finance role, I vividly remember I'm a much better relationship builder and communicator, and I'm a bit goofy. I did and was almost on the path to do improv comedy in Chicago at Second City. I was in their conservatory, and where I then met my wife.
No way.
I still regret not seeing you do that, Mike. I so wanted to see that.
Oh, I love it. Honestly, it's one of my true passions. But so I digress. So so I ended up doing that, and I walked into the office of a director almost every day at my financial development program job, and just yucked it up with him for 20 minutes. And one of the senior managers came up to me and said, "Hey, we already have another funny accountant on the team. You can't just go talking to the director." And I was like, I don't think this job is for me. So I moved over to Thailand and Malaysia, worked there for a bit. And one of my coworkers was like, "Hey, I have a friend killing it in IT headhunting." I was like, "Is that sales?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." So I flew back after quitting my job when I was over there backpacking around with my ex-girlfriend, and ultimately took a job in IT recruiting 6 weeks after 9/11, which was the single worst time to ever do that job. And basically just learned how to build relationships and helped kind of grow a lot of the tech startups in Chicago for the last 20 years. And then James and I decided to do this, and this is where I spend a fair amount of my time, obviously, growing this business. So in summary, no one really pushed me, kind of found my way through a lot of circuitous paths, but would rather, be nowhere else. I texted my brother yesterday, life of a founder is a lot of ups and downs, but I would not want to ever be going through this with anyone else than my brother. And a lot of people ask, how do you run a business with your brother? And it's you can cry with each other 1 minute, argue about something in a constructive manner about what we should do with the business, and then hang up and tell you that you love each other and you can't wait to get after it the next day. So if the chemistry's there, There's really
Yeah.
no better way to do it, in my opinion.
I love how distinct both of your reflections are, just your journey into the professional world and what you wanted to contribute professionally. But I hear like really distinct moments, like this writer teacher of mine, he talks about these lifeline moments where it could be a moment or an event or a conversation, and your life is not the same after that. And I hear a few of those from you. From Michael, I hear the moment your dad was like, we're driving to this college and we're going to have a conversation. James, I hear about the trauma, which if you want to share, we can come back to. I'd love to hold space for that. I also hear, and I relate to it, the teacher that was like, you have a knack for that. And I had that my senior year of high school. I took a drama class because I needed an art credit, and it ended up being the most purposeful thing I've ever done. A classmate of mine, through that project, she just very casually was like, you should keep doing this. You have a knack for it. And I totally fled from that for like a decade and then naturally have come back to it. And even in doing this and hosting this podcast, it's like telling others stories in storytelling is it. And I love how essential and simple it is. And then for me, like Michael, I relate to journeying through different corporate settings. And what I hear from you too that I relate to is like, you're so interested in the relationships and the curiosity of it, almost above the tactical functional work itself, that's probably allowed you to like chameleon into different places and have impact. So thank you guys so much. Maybe bringing it to Rituil. You know, Michael, you started to talk about it, and people ask all the time, what is it like to start a business with your brother? But talk to me about the inception of it and maybe that lifeline moment that was like, I'm going to do this.
The inception of it, like when I left my last kind of corporate role, I knew, Michael came with me on a trip to Portugal. So that was a big thing where he came along with me. And we might talk about this a little bit more, in detail, but it was sort of like just kind of a low, everyone goes through like just low points, right? Just kind of like, as you'll call them, dark points, low points, just kind of, you're just not yourself, your true self, as we'll talk about probably. And I reached out to Michael. Michael realized that, right? And it was literally a week before I was going. I said, "Hey, you want to come along? I'm going on this trip, and I would love to have you come." He came along with me, right? And he planted that seed there. He's like, he loved to travel, and he definitely saw the beauty in Portugal. He definitely saw sort of the nature in Portugal. Portugal for us is a very special place. It's where all of our products are made, and they have a massive commitment to nature and sustainability. And as we've talked about with the brand, not just within the materials that we use, like the natural corks and the linens, which, I'm a huge fan of natural linen and cotton, but they really commit to renewable and sustainable energy they ran on sustainable energy for 6 days, just renewable energy alone. So it's a very special place, right? And
Well, can I ask you, I'll interrupt you just to ask, at that moment in your life, before you asked Michael, why for you were you like, I'm going to go to Portugal? What was that process?
For me, I had to go there with my prior company. I was actually going there to set up a manufacturing infrastructure.
So life just brought you there.
And then, life just brought me there. Like, eventually life brought me there. And I think brought me back there, honestly, because in prior I was with Pottery Barn and Target in their design areas. And I visited quite a bit, right? But I was there for a different reason, different kind of manufacturing, et cetera. But the cool thing about the place is, they're true artisans there. The brand was kind of really born there. And not on that trip was the little seed that Michael planted. But then, fast forward a few months later, where I ended up leaving my company. This was in the spring, and Michael was like, "Hey, is this time for us to start doing something?" And I said, I really just need to take time. Whenever I leave a job or however it ends up, I end up spending spent 3 months in the garden. I spent 3 months in a yard. I spent 3 months out in
Mm.
nature, and I really needed that time. For me, that's where I'm at my best, or where if I notice I'm not, it's where I've had like the best moments, like even in college, 4 days in the backcountry, just most kind of aha moments in my life is just spending time alone in nature. And that's what I did for 3 months. And then I started up the meditation practice and started meditating. And it's like, okay. And we knew we wanted to start something, right? And then Ritual is really born out of a meditation. We were going back and forth, Michael and I, on what we should do. I loved ceramics. I love the idea of bringing people back to the table and breaking bread, having a meal together. I think it's a lost ritual. I love the idea of just help, the wellness side of our brand of movement, of yoga, of meditation. That again is a ritual. My wife is an artist, a charcoal artist, creating art. That's a beautiful ritual, or journaling is a beautiful ritual. Playing music is another ritual. Getting ready for bed, just taking the time for rest was a ritual. And it was a moment where we were going down this path of, okay, do we want to go into the idea of sitting around a table? Do we want to go into gardening, right? Do we want to go into rest and the sheets and the linens? Do we want to go into the movement? And then it was like every single one of these practices for me was grounding. Every single one of these practices I was doing in my home and kind of finding that true center. And that's when it was like, well, this is what we want to bring to the world then. And that's where we kind of get to this idea of like helping people create their interior sanctuary. And for me, it just all knitted together. It took a few months of just being and gardening and doing all this. But I don't think, through those 3 months, I would throw on an apron and cook a meal for my family. And I really would like slow down, light my candles, put on my music, and really enjoy doing that, And so I think that time for me, and then moving on the mat and meditating, and then all the gardening, these are all like future tips of what's going to come with the brand. But it really got me to slow down. It really got me to kind of find my true center. And you hear Michael and I talk about, the motor. It's an amazing thing to have when you're a founder and want to start a business. It's also a hindrance, right? And not doing things mindfully, as we like to talk about. And I think I was able to find that mindful balance through Ritual. And yeah, that's what we want to help everyone kind of find in a way. There's a lot more behind it, but that's how we started. That's how we started. And we're like, let's start with the meditation and movement products. Because we interviewed 7 to 8 amazing human beings, yoga teachers, yoga studio owners, therapists who went into yoga. And we really went deep with them about their lives, why they do what they do, what products are missing, what environment is missing in this world. And we gave them preview of what we wanted to do. They gave feedback on the products. I'm a firm believer in this way of creating a brand or creating products, right? It wasn't our ideas. It was the ideas that we heard that needed to exist, right? It's sort of like the community is what built this thing. We're just purely a vessel to kind of bear the cost burden right now and try to bring it to reality. But what we keep hearing, I had a conversation the other day. The guy's like, hey, I need that. Tell me how to do that. Are you telling people how to do that? That's a tough question, right? Tell me how to do a ritual. Because it's so individual for someone. But I think our goal is to have enough within our brand community and experience that maybe it's not a product. Maybe it's just creating the setting. That's great too.
I love what you said about people asking, how do you create ritual? And Michael, I'm curious to kick it to you, like building off of that and obviously creating this brand. But for you, what is ritual in your life and in your, and in your work life?
Yeah, for me, I found meditation, like a lot of people, through Headspace many years ago. And very active mind, like most, that passenger that I like to say, that constantly reminds you of all the things that you do wrong. I also vividly remember my brother and I were in Cleveland, probably like 2 months after I started meditating a little more deeply, I'd say. He started introducing me to just some other meditations that were just really thought provoking, which I really enjoyed. And then, did a few meditations, and I was sitting with him in his Adirondack chairs in his yard. And I was like, have you just started meditating and then you start bawling, crying? he's like, yeah. He's like, it means it's working. And I'm like, okay, because like I kind of felt it and it was super weird. And then I started crying and then I felt great. And it was like that. And it was really around self-forgiveness for me. And it was just really powerful. And then, about a year ago, of course, I'm in relationship building and sales, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, I can talk about yoga products. And hey, when I started this journey, I'm like, oh, hey, I'll be the salesperson. And then obviously, as I got more entrenched through meditation and understanding what we were really trying to do, he's like, hey, we're selling all of these products. You should probably start practicing yoga. I'm like, it's probably a good idea. So, I was literally avidly really starting March of last year, right around when we launched. I found this amazing studio in my hometown, and now I'm there 3 or 4 days a week. And, James always talks about moving meditation, and it's really what it is. I find my best practices are, with my eyes closed, and I'm just focusing on my breath and my movement. And sure, yeah, I get a great physical workout, but the mental workout and the clearing and the spaciousness is just such a beautiful way to start your day. So, I think those became my kind of foundational rituals. And then, for me, and James jokes around about this, but like I golf a lot, and I love to golf barefoot, and people at the course tease me, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm grounding, I'm getting energy. I'm walking in nature, and really, I think demystifying what rituals are. I think people hear about meditation, they think about yoga, and they're like, I can't do that, or that's too difficult. It's like, well, why do you golf? It's like, because I don't think about work. I don't think about anything other than where I'm at. I'm like, that is meditation. It's like, why do you fish? Like, why do you fish? It's just like, it's calm. I'm in nature. There's so many things that I think, walking your dog, interacting with your dog, because, they're just force you to be in the present moment. Babies, children, all of these little things, they quiet that inner voice, that passenger. And that's why I think people feel at peace when they're doing those rituals. And yeah, so I think I feel like one of my favorite things to do when we're either at a trade show or at an event is talking to people about what those really are, and then people realizing they've been doing it themselves, and it's really recognizing that, and then hopefully engaging in those moments more frequently and being more present, which is something that I tremendously struggle with. I'm fortunate enough that I don't live a lot in the past. I'm really more of an individual who lives in the future, worries about the future, wants to plan for the future. So that's something that James is constantly keeping me grounded on. It's like, you're exactly where you should be. Everything is happening while the journey may not be exactly as we planned. We're going to end up exactly where we're supposed to be. So,
like, what is the shift you think in your working and collaboration dynamic now that you have rituals or those grounding practices in your life? Like, what is the impact you think that allows you to build together?
I think the big thing is self-awareness. The big thing is knowing who you are and being true to who you are. And Michael sees that, like, he knows me so well. So I think it's like if I'm flying off, not flying off, but if I have a moment where I'm angry, it happened yesterday. It was beautiful. He's like, I know that's not you talking. I know that's the situation. I mean, he does have a wonderful gift of empathy. And I think when we use our gifts for good, and just in understanding people and what they need and want and knowing them, you first need to know yourself. And I feel like that was a big leap. And then other people can then know you and see you, and then you can know them. And because you spend 20 years, or I spent 20 years in corporate America not knowing myself and trying to please others and tell other people what they want to hear. And you just hear the stories, right? And I think Michael and I were both kind of pleasers in a way. We could tell people what they, and you're worried about what others think, right? That's the whole idea. But with Michael, the cool thing about brothers of doing this, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like I have a bad day, I'll go off. That performance, it's not going to show up on a sheet of paper for me. and I think eventually if Ritual grows, okay, well, I've thought about that. How do we remain authentic to who we are? How do we let people remain authentic to who they are? That's the big thing as this grows for me. That's going to be so important that we create a culture of people being able to be their true self, because that's the only way we're able to kind of even have this thing. And we've had some people help us out along the way, and they have been there. And that's what's so cool to see, because I think when you are operating within that realm, you are at your best, you're doing what you should be doing. And Michael and I think we were just maybe focused on the wrong goals before. We have to constantly stay focused on what we're really trying to do. And then us kind of going on this journey together, understanding like there's our way of time. There's this other vertical. We've talked about timeline of things. And
yeah, talk to me about what vertical timing means and the difference between horizontal and vertical timing.
Yeah. What it really boils down to for myself is this kind of horizontal timeline of thinking that this needs to happen at this time and then at this time. And it's a big attachment to kind of trying to control what happens when. And we all know that really just doesn't work. If we have an expectation around that, we're disappointed. If we don't have we're all of a sudden surprised. Why did this happen then? Or, I planned my life on a horizontal timeline of getting the job, getting the promotion, getting married, having a family, then making money to do this, and then making money. It's like, but then this vertical timeline, which is very hard to notice and feel, or things are going to happen when they are meant to happen. And the only way they will happen is your ability to let go of control. We've talked about the book, The Surrender Experiment, that I read, where it was all about letting go of control, and something comes to you and you say yes. Like the mere fact of Michael coming to me saying, I want to do this. I think we should start this. And me saying yes is just sort of the first path for this to even happen, right? Because I could have been, oh no, I have to go look for another job. I have to go be a VP of design somewhere. I have to do this. And I had to purposefully, like nothing was coming to me saying, James, we want to hire you to do that. Like it wasn't unfolding for me to go do that. Like this was unfolding for me to do. This is the vertical where I'm like, okay, I have to then accept it. And even since we've started this business, there's relationships and things we tried to make happen where we tried to control on our horizontal timeline. And then as soon as we let them go, all of a sudden, literally, Catherine, within 48 hours, this amazing opportunity unfolds and lands within the brand. And we didn't even have to ask for it. It came to us. And then it's just a matter of us accepting it and running with it. And I think I even gave this my advice to my son who's looking for an internship. I said, pay attention to the things that come to you. Say yes, not no. Because it's amazing how tone deaf we are, right? To the things that might unfold right before us. Listening. If we're not open, if we're not listening. And that's how I explain it to people, is like keeping your antennas up. Rick Rubin talks about keeping your antennas up. And then,
yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
But idea is supposed to happen. It's going to happen. You're either going to bring it to the world or someone else is going to do it. And I think our antennas were up. My antennas were up. Michael's were at this time frame to create this, right? And they're still up on how we should be guided.
We're talking so much about, we all share now the physical meditation, the moving meditation. And I found this through my study of yoga. It is through the physical that anything emotional, mental, spiritual releases. And I can feel the physical manifestation of clinging and trying to control. And so I think that brings it full circle to like the rituals we're talking about. There is a connection to the physical body it's a physical feeling versus trying to think our way there. James, on the subject of physical, I did want to ask, because I know it's a part of this journey and everything we're talking about, whatever you want to share, if you want to, about the experience in high school.
Oh yeah.
And what that, how that is present with you in this chapter.
Yeah. When I was 16, like every 16-year-old boy just had this like fascination with fire, right? Would play with fire and hairspray, right? So when I was 16, I had an accident. Michael was present. This really, I think, whether this was a big point in our relationship, I believe, I know it is. But yeah, so I was just messing around with fire, and then it exploded, right? Michael was like within like a few feet in our kitchen. And I was basically holding on to like a gallon of hairspray, equivalent of a gallon of gasoline. Imagine holding a flame to a gallon of gasoline. And then it just exploded. And then I caught on fire, and traditional stop, drop, and rolled. I think the flames might even hit Michael briefly, but I was soaked in that liquid. So I was just like a human flame. And then I spent, my parents were in Mexico at the time. So I was life flighted to a burn unit here, Metro Health in Cleveland. And I was very fortunate to only spend 3 weeks there. A lot of burn victims, you could be in there months, years, right? But for me, this was all at the age of like being very self-conscious of myself, my body, how I looked. I literally was lifting weights prior to this happening, right? I remember what I had on. I was very much into myself, my body. And I almost thought like, boy, this is like one way to kind of get me to not be self-centered. I thought through this literally when it was happening, because, you're right.
Like it'll humble
yeah,
you.
there's a lot of burn victims. I'm so lucky it didn't hit my face, right? But in the moment, I didn't know that. It was because the skin on it was all burned, right? But it just didn't happen to scar my face. But what happened to scar was my chest and my arm. So, right? So it's fire to me, and as I think about fire, and it's become part of my meditations. And our products, one of our core products, are made with fire, right? And to me, I haven't told many people in the community don't know that, but when we visited this factory and this cork block comes up, I'm like, I've never seen anything like that. They're like, yeah, it's burned cork, and it's the suberin in the cork glues it all together. It's just highly sustainable but beautiful, and it has a scent to it, like smoky. And to me, that was just like, whoa, this is one of those things that just came out of the blue, right? We weren't even supposed to go visit this amazing factory. It was just someone mentioned it to me. And then at the end of our trip, we went there. And now it's what the meditation seed is made out of, right? So it's a very kind of special product because it's burned, it's made with fire. And even the texture of it, is it's very textural, similar to like burn scars. But so yeah, that was a big setback, but move forward for me, and I even it's funny because one of the big moments one of the most significant meditation moments I think I've had in my life was just a year and a half, and it took me back there really clearly. A lot of pieces, it was really like, boom. It was an intense meditation, and it took me back, and it was a humbling moment, right? Because it reminded me that in that moment of that excruciating pain, like not when you're getting burned, but after, I was the closest to myself that I ever was, right? I was really like, at that point I wasn't meditating, I was praying, but I was very like close to who I was, and then being kind of connected to others and really understanding, myself even in a way, right? It was very humbling. Like all that other stuff just went away, right? All the noise of what I had to do, who I was, what I looked like, it all just went away. it just it melts away, and you're like, this is who you are. This is how you survive, and this is what you have to do. So we all know, everyone says through struggle and suffering comes growth. And, that's an extreme example. Not many people are burn victims, but a lot of people are victims of something, right? And for me, that's just my suffering. One of them, one of many, 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 physical that I went through, that I wouldn't be who I was today. For Rituil, I probably would it even exist? No, I wouldn't be attracted to this burned cork, right? It wouldn't be part of my DNA and wanting to get it out, and people wouldn't buy it and love it. And so it's, with any experience, nothing is lost. So for me, and then my relationship with my brother, we've gone back to that. I started journaling about it. I've never journaled about it, right? I started journaling about it 1.5 years ago, and I just did like this intense 4-day journaling, and I read it to Michael. Michael just broke down, started crying, because we haven't visited that moment, so, but I mean, it's like we are so close, and it's interesting because you can go back to that moment, and it's like, we're there, but we're not different. I think that moment stripped us of everything, that those rocks that Michael talks about. It just strips you of it. It's kind of back to who you really, really are, that time frame. And, but yeah, so it's a struggle. It set me back, didn't go to college for a year, really decided what I wanted to do, and was so self-conscious. And the funny thing is, it wasn't until Michael and I went to Portugal together. This was only 2 years ago, right? Or 2.5, that I just kind of let go of that self-conscious image of my scars. And I'm like, screw it, and I just swam in the ocean, and didn't worry about having a shirt on or anything. It's, and I was just, it felt so good. I'm like floating in that sea in Portugal, and not caring about what I look like, but more like, this feels so good to be floating in this water right now. And from that day forward, I was like, well, I don't care, about what this looks like.
I'm just so grateful to have you share that story and that piece of it's not the full story, it's a piece of what this is becoming. And Michael, I would love to ask how the journey of this has impacted you, and how it's cultivated even more meaning in this moment as you guys have been diving into Rituil.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I was probably 14 or 15 at the time. That day was a blur. The whole, he didn't mention this, but probably the most traumatic piece for me through that process, which he didn't mention, is he actually contracted a staph infection after being in the hospital for a couple of weeks waiting on a surgery, and started contracting some sepsis and got pretty scary. Like, that moment, even beyond the actual fire moment, was pretty challenging. I think that was the point where I thought maybe I was going to lose him. It's interesting because he kind of told that story about, I remember he called me how many ever months ago, and I was just getting ready in the morning, just listening, yeah, and then I sat down on my bed and listened a little bit more, and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to cry. And then it was really loud and really deep. I cried. I then apologized to him for crying so hard. I'm like, I just stole this from you as you're sharing with me. And he's like, no, this is great. Like, you're processing this. It was a really beautiful moment. And I literally laid down in the middle of my workday and slept for 4 hours. I've never done that ever in my life. Yeah. And, I called him after. I was like, wow, like, thank you for sharing that. Like, I know this wasn't about me, but I really needed to process that. So it's just really interesting, back to that physicality piece that you two were talking about how that body and that mind are connected, and how, how it'll communicate with you, and how you need it to, to lighten up and move forward. But, Portugal, that trip, and James kind of hit the nail on the head, is like, and we kind of went into a little bit, but he called me, and what he didn't mention is I said no. I was like, I can't go to Portugal with you. Like, I've got a wife, I've got kids in school. I'm like, I can't go. And he called me like 6 days later and he was like, hey, like, can you go with me? And I was like, all right, I got to go to Portugal. I'm like,
I love an adamant first no.
yeah. Oh, it was a clear first no. It was like, I can't go to Portugal like in 6 days for a week. Like, and I truly am thinking like,
ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, I mean, I said, if I didn't
You just needed to connect back to the improv self.
Well, right.
Yeah,
Like if I didn't
really,
have children,
you know?
I'd be there. But like, I was like, so I remember, I'm like, Liz, I was like, I think I have to go to Portugal. I'm like, my brother needs me. She's like, go. And I'm like, I love you. And I went and just got to watch and just develop that relationship and rediscover each other, which is really the bedrock for, the bedrock of Rituil. And the way that I kind of share this story is like, I was able to be there for him. And then through that, I found meditation and yoga through that next 6 to 12 months. And it's just this really beautiful circular story that went there to connect in an unselfish manner. And then he shared so much with me about his journey. And then now, like, our ultimate goal at the end of the day with Rituil is to bring that feeling, that emotion, that connectivity with your authentic self. And then, as we like to say, that allows you to connect truly with others. It's like, bring that to the world. And the products are merely that vehicle. But at the end of the day, that is our purpose. If we can make a living to live, our lives in a meager manner and get that out to the world, that circularity like we had between the two of us, that's success at the end of the day.
You've shared, I love how the personal has created something. What's next for it? Where are you today? And what's your attention on? I won't say anything related to horizontal timing, but what are you, let me phrase it this way. What are you surrendering to right now in the context of your business and your brand?
That's a good question. I think we have this like horizontal plan for, as I mentioned, all the other rituals in the home, right? Like the tea and the meal, the rest, the bedding, the bath, right? But those are really at the mercy of, I think, the relationships that we build through the brand and when we can bring those to the world, right? So it's kind of neat where I don't think we're going to force them. Like, we have time frames for them. We really want people's homes to be that interior sanctuary and show how they could mindfully live throughout the home. But what I would say also, I think what's really going to drive that is there's a lot of cool things as it relates to getting people together, getting communities together. We're talking about retreats that I think are really cool. A lot of our co-creators, as we talk to them, kind of in this digital era and even post-COVID, the biggest thing that everyone is missing is that human connection. So I think what we're most excited about is finding ways to bring people together. And then again, the products are a vehicle, bringing people together in nature and giving them the products to practice on as an extension of nature, getting them to understand how that feels. A big focus for us, honestly, on the business side is working with wellness, spa, and hospitality, and getting our products in the hands of beautiful places where people are in the mindset to practice and take that break and rest. And then our goal is that they experience somewhat of this great transformation at these places, and then they're able to kind of bring a piece of that home with them to their home. Yeah, so I think the community is what I would really say is going to take us to where we should go. Just like they took us to the beginning. They gave us the right of way to say, start, we love your mat. We love the cork. We love the colors. We love the feel of it, as you told us. Everyone gave us license to go there. And I think that community is going to give us license to build.
It feels like then it becomes something that's being co-created, and to your point, you're just the vessel. And
yeah, we are the vessel. It's an important point. And it's like, that's what we love, is when people come and say, I could really use this, or have you thought about this? And if we have the ability to do it, we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
To that point, I think this is like a practical question that if I was listening to this, I would ask. You both have responsibilities, you have families. How do you stay in faith of the vertical timing when you said it, and I love it? You were like,
we're taking on the cost of building this, and we're patient and we're vessels and we're stewards. But to Michael, to what you say so well, I'm sure there's moments where that passenger creeps in, because there's also, the reality of building something new. So how do you guys find that you balance that piece of things?
I'll say one thing that I think has continually happened is we've had 3, 4, 5 moments, whether it's, we were fortunate enough to win this pitch contest in Michigan that kind of really helped catapult us. But at the event, one of the kind of the venture capitalists was like, "Hey, how do you know when you need to raise funding?" I'm like, "When you have $700 in your business bank account." It was a very raw moment, but we've had these moments. But the interesting thing about this vertical timeline, and frankly, we had one of those yesterday. It's like just when you feel like, I don't know what the right analogy is, but where, it's like you're just trying to dig it out, or you're probably stuck, you feel you're stuck in the mud. This opportunity comes up, or this email shows up, and you're like, oh, wow, like this is exactly when we needed it. It's when it was supposed to happen. And it's those moments that recharge you. Sometimes that's feedback from, a teacher or a teacher of teachers on the mat. Sometimes that is a potential new hospitality client. Sometimes it's one of our conversations, with you that aren't on a podcast. It's appreciating those moments. And then James and I do a good job. I actually sent him an email today or yesterday. I don't know if he's read it yet, but it was an email like, "Hey, we haven't had any sales for X amount of weeks. We've done this, we've done that." And it's like remembering, not a big one to look in the past, but remembering where you were and remembering how much we've done in a short amount of time, and the feedback and the energy and the impact that we're having when people are saying things like, "Hey, I've practiced on a plastic mat. I've always wanted to practice on or with nature," and we're helping people be grounded and connected. And it's just remembering those moments are what get us through the inevitable kind of moments of being founders. It's really challenging. It's honestly, having had children, it's probably the most comparable kind of journey, because there are absolute moments of just love. And there's nothing more I want to be doing right now to then like just, oh my God, like parenting is the most difficult thing. I don't know how to navigate this, and it's very difficult, but excessively more rewarding. And everything that you've ever done, whether it's a career, whether it's a friendship, whether it's building, relationships with your family, the harder you work, the more joy it brings you. So it's just reminding yourself of that. Sorry, it's a bit of a diatribe, but that's at least what I share with myself and remind James.
Two quick hitters. One is for James, one is for Michael. For James, it's explain the I in Rituil.
I'm so
and
glad.
For Michael, it'll be the last.
Yeah.
Where should someone start if they're like, I don't have a ritual in my life?
So the I in Rituil is very purposeful, and I think it goes back to what Michael talked about before. But I think this term ritual has a lot of kind of attachments to large institutions or formality and things that you need to do. And we really try to redefine the word with the I. And that true ritual starts with yourself. It starts here. There's nothing else needs to exist. No, you do not need to go into a building that's 1,200 years old. You don't need to. We really need to start here, in that center, in your true point. So the I, that's how Rituil was born. And the idea of like, if you can get yourself true, yourself right, then you'll be able to be of service to others and be able to do what you believe you should be doing right out there in the world. So it's all about starting with the I first and foremost. And that's where Michael got me to that point in that trip in Portugal, right? It's like I had to it's how we can do this as two brothers. We've never been able to do it because we weren't focused on getting our own kind of I right first. So that's why the I kind of in Rituil. I don't know if you want to add to that, Michael, or say where you think it should start from after that.
No, that's beautifully said. I would say it all starts with the breath. Like at the end of the day, that's what keeps us going. What adds us to kind of the life force of everything around us. So if people are going to start with something, I'll take something that works for me, and something that I heard recently in my last Eckhart Tolle podcast, who I love listening to. But I think just breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, and counting those breaths as simple as up to 10, I think that will allow you to be in the present and slow that mind down. And, if that's not getting you there, sometimes just rubbing your fingers together and feeling your skin and feeling your hands, realizing you're something, you're there, that physical touch. The combination of those two things is an excellent way just to slow down and slow the noise. And when you can figure out that you don't need a really intense activity to do that, you don't need to be lifting or working out or even doing yoga. It could be as small as that moment. That could create the space, because ultimately you're trying to create the space between your thoughts and being still. And one thing we didn't talk about, about Rituil, and a lot of great things, is that it was born in stillness. It wasn't born from doing. It was born from taking rest and being with nature. And Rituil wouldn't be here if it weren't for that stillness, which is counterintuitive to everything we are taught and everything our mind tells us to do.
That's beautiful. I'm calling it a manifesto that you sent me.
Oh, yeah.
And
yep.
The first sentence you wrote, pause and breathe. This is how Rituil was founded. And then I'll just read this part. In a society that idolizes hustle culture, true wellness is often overlooked. Our minds and bodies can never seem to fully catch up to each other without putting everything on pause. Rituil was born from a period of rest, a step away from corporate work and into mindful living. And how beautiful, because that's exactly what this conversation has been for me this morning. And truly, it will impact my life long beyond the last year to have been in relationship with you both and watching you build this and getting to be a little part of it. So thank you for sharing this with me in this format. I'm so grateful and privileged to be able to share it out into the world. And it's been an invitation for me to come back to something that feels like it's such a part of my purpose. So it's working, what you're doing in more ways than one.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And that's the kind of stuff that we say. It makes us feel like ready to do it another day. So thank you, Catherine, so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for hosting, and your friendship and your guidance throughout the past year. It's been instrumental.
What I hope you take away from this conversation with James and Michael is the reminder that Rituil doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as pausing to take a breath, walking your dog, petting your cat, dancing in your living room, or creating a little space to just sit still. Since our talk, I've been experimenting with that in small ways in my own life. And what I've come to notice is that it's my default to stay distracted, to stay busy, to stay consuming content and information because there is an infinite amount to take in. And so a simple change like cooking and eating my dinner without being on my phone or watching TV makes a big difference. It's amazing how grounding even tiny changes can feel that bring us back to our essential nature, bring us back to our breath, our body, our thoughts, ourselves. And maybe that's the invitation for you as you close this episode. Notice one ritual in your day. Maybe it already exists. Maybe there's a new one to invite in. And give it just a little bit more attention. I'm grateful to James and Michael for sharing their story and for the care they're putting into building Rituil. You can follow their journey at Daily Rituil, that's RITUIL, and explore their products at rituil.com. Don't forget to use code The Truth Is for 10% off your first order. Thank you, as always, for listening to The Truth Is. I hope you leave this episode with something that stays with you, a question worth holding or an insight worth following. If today's conversation resonated, I'd be so grateful if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with someone you'd like to invite into the conversation. You can also follow along at The Truth Is Podcast. A special thank you to the people who make this show possible. Editing by Dan Kroll, music by Will Savino, visual identity by Sarah Gaynor and Jonathan Bush, and guidance from my friend and advisor, Natalie Tulloch. I'm Catherine Flashner. Thank you for listening to The Truth Is.